Coming into the season, Stephon Castle wasn't necessarily billed as a elite perimeter defender or even team defender. There was upside and there were flashes throughout high school of competence, but it was more so viewed as whatever pluses he would give you on the defensive end were just extra to his offensive upside. That narrative completely flipped this year at UConn as Castle really took a step back from being the star on the team and committed to doing the little things that contribute to winning basketball, especially on the defensive end, as he quickly emerged as one of the very best perimeter defenders, not only in this draft class, but in the entire country. As a defensive playmaker, Castle's numbers were encouraging, as he had a steal rate of 1.8, which was slightly below average for his position in the 45th percentile, but a block rate of 2.0, which ranked in the 90th percentile. Castle doesn't gamble much, which makes sense why his steal rate is slightly lower than his block rate. Instead, Castle utilizes his footwork, positional size, and strength to consistently disrupt ball handlers, force turnovers, and block shots. What makes Castle's defensive playmaking even more impactful is how quickly he can turn it into transition offense, either using his size to attack the rim on his own or using his playmaking vision to set up teammates. While Castle has immense upside on the offensive end, it was his defense that was the biggest surprise of this season. Simply put, Castle is one of the best perimeter defenders in the country. When Castle was on the court, UConn had a dominant defensive rating of 95.5, which ranked in the 98th percentile, compared to 101.5 when he was off. Still very, very good, but not quite as dominant. That 6.0 differential ranked in the 80th percentile. Now, I know your initial thought is, well, he got to play with Donovan Clingan, who is one of the most dominant defensive centers that we've seen in recent years, and that's a fair thought process, but it also does a disservice to Castle's dominance on the perimeter. In the 757 possessions that Castle and Clingan shared the floor, UConn had a defensive rating of 89.5, which ranked in the 99th percentile. They were one of the very best defensive pairings in all of college basketball. Now, defensive rating is a team statistic on its own, but we're going to use Castle and Clingan as the focal points, as they were the two elite defenders on an elite defensive team. In the 715 possessions that Castle played without Clingan on the floor, UConn's defensive rating jumped to 102.3. Still very good and ranked in the 80th percentile, but not quite as dominant as that 99th percentile. So, Clingan obviously made a huge impact, but let's flip the scenario and look at it when Clingan's on the court without Castle. In those 521 possessions where Clingan played without Castle on the floor, UConn's defensive rating was 101.8, which ranked in the 83rd percentile. So slightly better, but still in that same range of Castle without Clingan. Whenever one player was without the other, UConn had a stifling defense, but they experienced a similar drop-off. What Clingan meant to UConn's interior defense is eerily similar to what Castle meant to their perimeter defense. At 6'6", with his fundamentals, his strength, his agility, his screen navigation, and his discipline, Stephon Castle emerged as one of the elite perimeter defenders in the country and in the 2024 NBA draft. I'm Tyler Metcalf. Welcome to Film School. Let's dive in. All right, let's start with Castle's on-ball defense and see the different ways that he's really able to disrupt ball handlers, and then transitions that into different aspects of their defensive game. So here, it's nothing crazy, but we're going to see a lot of fundamental and lower body stuff. Really impressive discipline stuff from Castle here. So as Xavier runs this little handoff, Castle's going to do a good job of just kind of snaking over the screen. He does so by stepping up and kind of getting into the ball handler. Gets away with a little bit of a hand check here, but nothing we're going to worry too much about, as the refs didn't. So what's important here is focusing on Castle's lower body. Look at how low he is in his stance, and this allows him to explode out of this and stay with the ball handler. Additionally, instead of turning his hips and panicking and turning his hips to chase the ball handler here, his hips are still perpendicular with the baseline. This makes sure that he can plant that retreat step and swivel back and not get sent flying by the step back. A lot of college on-ball defenders panic when their guy goes over the screen like this. a lot of guys would completely flip their hips, make them parallel to the baseline, and really make themselves vulnerable to a step back here. Instead, Castle stays on balance, and he's able to quickly reposition himself, adjust to the one dribble after the step back, and gets a really, really strong contest on this mid-range pull-up. It's really impressive defensive fundamentals from start to finish here from Castle, and it's lower body strength that translates throughout levels of competition. On this one, we're yet again going to see Castle's strong screen navigation, on-ball defense, knowledge and awareness of his scouting report, and then ability to turn strong defense into immediate offense going the other direction. Beautiful alley-oop here. Now let's break it down. So Castle is going to basically hound Desmond Claude the entire time here. So he's really attached, really disruptive, low in a defensive stance. It's exactly what you want to see from your point of attack menace of a defender, putting a lot of pressure on the other team's kind of one of their primary offensive options. As the screen comes, the center's going to try and drag Castle with him and force this switch to get Klingon switched on Desmond Claude on the perimeter. But Castle does a great job of just kind of slithering around this screen and getting back to his assignment. It's also a great example of Castle knowing the scouting report. Desmond Claude shot 24% from three this year, so he knows that he doesn't have to rush to get back. Instead, he can go way under, and he can be patient and allow the play to develop and allow himself to get back into position in a disciplined and on-balance manner. As he does so, he is now back in a perfect square stance, low in his defensive stance, ready to react and wall up any move that Claude has here. Claude is going to drive to his left and try to go back or behind his back, and Castle reads him like a book. Again, he knows the scouting report, he knows the tendencies, and he immediately pounces. So let's get a little more fluid here. Goes behind the back, walls him up, and forces the turnover. It's inconsistent ball handling, but it's incredibly precise and aware defense because Castle knows exactly what he's doing, and he has the size, the strength, and the fundamentals to execute on it. Now going the other way, as he gets this ball right across half court in transition, his eyes are immediately up. He knows that Klingon's going to clear out this low man and that his teammate is sprinting to the rim. There's no one else back. The rest of the defense is still above the three-point line. His head is up. This defender is now scrambling to recover, but his eyes are on the ball. He has no idea where his man is. Castle throws a perfect lob. Easy layup. All right, this time we see how Castle really maximizes his positional size and strength to force one of the better point guard prospects in Devin Carter into a really tough shot. So as Carter gets the ball on the left wing here, we're going to see Castle yet again get in a perfect defensive stance. He's bending at the knees, wide stance, on balance. He's not just bent over at his hips, faking a defensive stance. He's actually sitting down in a defensive stance so he can react to whatever Carter wants to do here. Now, it's important to note that Castle has a couple inches and some weight on Carter, who is a more traditional point guard size. As Carter tries to drive middle, Castle's able to immediately react and bump Carter off his line. Carter wants to be going a little more direct here, but Castle's strength and fundamentals and ability to immediately bump him off his drive forces Carter into a bit more of a circuitous route to the rim. As Carter drives, he's going to throw his shoulder into Castle, but Castle's 6'6", 210 pounds. This move by Carter, who is an incredibly strong player, typically works against most point guard defenders. Not with Castle. Castle is barely affected, and his strong footwork and strong fundamentals from the start allow him to absorb that contact and immediately recover and contest that tough shot by Carter. Still plenty of time on the shot clock, but Castle's defense from start to finish here really disrupts everything that Carter wants to do. And it's stuff that Carter, we saw all year. We saw Carter be able to do this against most point guard defenders, not with Castle, though. On this one, we get to see some of Castle's positional size and versatility while still being able to implement and switch and disrupt the ball handler to force a turnover. So at the very start here, Castle is matched up with David Joplin, who's listed at 6'8". As Marquette just does a little interchange in the corner, Castle immediately switches on to Ben Gold, who is listed at 6'11". As the play develops here, and Ben Gold's going to go set the screen on Cam Spencer for a little DHO, Castle immediately knows that he needs to switch this because Cam Spencer's getting hung up on Gold and the Castle's kind of in the way here on his own. So he immediately switches onto Stevie Mitchell, who is listed at 6'3". He has now guarded 3 players listed from 6'3 through 6'11 without hesitation on this play. As Mitchell drives, Castle, again, maintains that great footwork, that low defensive stance, and he's able to slide with Mitchell the entire way. Castle's strength bumps Mitchell off his line. It makes him panic a little bit because now he has a 6'6", 210-pound point guard wing, whatever you want to classify him as, smothering him, and he's unable to separate. Castle's strength knocks Mitchell off balance, and Mitchell loses the ball, and now UConn's running the other way in transition. All right, on this one, we can yet again see how Castle's discipline, strength, and fundamentals permeate everything he does on the defensive end. As Oso Ighodaro makes his kick out here, Castle closes out really under control. A lot of college defenders, especially freshmen, fly by here, desperate not to give up a corner 3. Castle knows that he can just close out short, close out under control, and get into Mitchell's space immediately to just deter him from even looking at the hoop right away. And this low defensive stance under control takes away Mitchell's eagerness to shoot, and it also allows Castle to react to whatever Mitchell does here off the bounce. Mitchell's going to drive, and we see how Castle's strong footwork and strength allow him to absorb blow after blow, put Mitchell in hell, and just not relinquish an inch of space, forcing the eventual kick out late in the clock here. Castle is doing all of this with 11 seconds on the shot clock. It would be very easy and understandable for him to panic knowing that they're late in the shot clock and fly by here desperate not to give up a shot. Instead, he just suffocates Mitchell from start to finish, doesn't bite at all, stays on the ground, and just doesn't give Mitchell an inch of space, and forces Mitchell to kick out of the mid-range with just a couple seconds left on the shot clock. It's incredible on-ball, disciplined defensive stuff by Castle, who, again, is just a freshman. Here, Castle shows a bit of craft with his screen navigation and just, again, how his presence really disrupts ball handlers. So there's nothing crazy here on that play, and it looks like the ball handler just kind of loses possession, which, in a sense he does, but Castle plays a major factor in that. As the screen comes here, Castle does a really creative thing here where that little step back freezes the screener, but it creates enough space for Castle to then plant off that back foot, right there, plant off that and get over the screen in time before the ball handler starts to attack. Castle knows that the ball handler is waiting for this screen to be set, so he doesn't put his teammate in a bad position and forces an illegal screen here. Castle times this to perfection by stepping back. He freezes the screener and is able to quickly get over that screen and into the ball handler before he attacks and before he can eat up space. Instead, Castle is the one who's eating up that space and forcing the ball handler off his drive. This physicality right there and his presence forces the ball handler to do something that he doesn't want to do. His drive, he wanted to be inside the lane already, but Castle's screen navigation and strength at the point of attack forces him outside the lane and forces this really elongated step back that the ball handler is just not ready for, and he coughs it up. Castle yet again shows us the advantage that he has with his size, his strength, and his composure here on defense as Marquette pushes early in transition, and Cam Jones, one of the better scorers in the Big East, just can't get anything. So as Marquette pushes in transition here, Castle's completely unbothered. He just picks up the ball. He knows that he can take Cam Jones on, cuts off that drive immediately, and forces Marquette to kick out and reset the offense. Now everyone's back in position. Everyone's behind the ball. Their half-court defense is set. Cam Jones, not pleased with the result of that, decides to attack immediately. As he does so, he doesn't, at no point in this drive does he have an advantage on Castle. He gets the ball here, and Castle just kind of pushes off this Oso screen to propel himself back into the path of Cam Jones, and he's able to beat Jones to the spot and further bump Jones off his drive. Jones wants to be a step ahead here, but he can't get his shoulders ahead of Castle's. That forces him to take off nearly outside of the opposite side of the lane from where he attacked. Remember, he was on the left side here, came all the way across. He wanted to be in taking off closer to the restricted arc. Instead, Castle has forced him all the way out to the hash mark on the opposite side of the lane while staying attached without fouling. As Jones goes up for the inside scoop finish, Castle's size and length advantage, it's an easy block for him. He meets it at the apex here, swats it out of bounds. From start to finish here, Cam Jones just doesn't have a chance on Castle because of how much bigger and physical Castle's able to play, and his discipline gets the block. This is one of the rare kind of clips that we see Castle momentarily out of position, but we see how his pursuit and his size can help him recover in the blink of an eye. So Chase Ross is going to just kind of get the ball here, and Ben Gold sets a solid screen on Castle that delays him and kind of bumps him off and creates some space for Ross to attack downhill. As Ross drives, Castle's help defense is kind of nowhere to be found, but understandably so, as both of his help defenders here retreat to the shooters on the perimeter, and it being an empty corner pick and roll, Klingon can't just completely desert Ben Gold, who can stretch the floor a bit. As Ross attacks, Castle is now recovered and eaten up a lot of space, and he's on his hip. As Ross goes up, he goes off of 2 feet here, which is fine in traffic, but in this kind of scenario, it slows him down and allows Castle to eat up even more space and recover even further. Castle is draped all over Ross here, and his size and athleticism allow him to elevate with Ross, times it to perfection, blocks it at the rim, and allows UConn to push and transition going the other way. So even when Castle's defense isn't immaculate, he's still more than good enough. Now we start to see Castle kind of blending the team defense into the on-ball defense, and we can see just how he implements and utilizes his strength, his size, his awareness, the fundamentals, everything to be an absolute menace. So as the play starts, Castle's on the opposite wing here. Seton Hall's going to run their offense, and as they get into this DHO, Castle does a really good job of being that great help defender that UConn relies on all 5 guys being. He does a great job of tagging Klingon's man here and kind of bumping him off the spot, delaying him from getting deep into the lane. If Castle doesn't have a good tag here, Seton Hall's center probably has a decent chance at a backdoor lob here. And by tagging this aggressively and this reliably, it allows Klingon to retreat back. Now this is where all of the fundamentals that we've seen from Castle continue to show up and really shine. After this tag, as the ball swings to his man, Castle closes out under control. High hand to deter the shot, chops the feet, low defensive stance, allows him to explode with the ball handler here and cut off the drive. Now, for a lot of on-ball defenders, this is a really vulnerable spot to be in. His hips are parallel to the baseline as the ball handler spins back. But since we know how good Castle's footwork is and how he's almost always on balance, he's able to immediately flip his hips here and stay with the ball handler. That should be a dribble move that this ball handler has probably executed and created a ton of space on all season, but Castle's fundamentals are immaculate here. It's really special stuff. It's all in the hips, and Castle's are some of the best. So just at full speed here, let's get that ability to plant and spin against his momentum, because it's all because he's in this low defensive stance. He's not bent over at the hips faking it. He's actually sitting in a defensive stance, and he's able to plant off this left foot, spin back, and he's just stuck like glue on this ball handler. He doesn't bite at the fake, stays grounded, reads the ball handler's intentions, elevates with him, meets him at the summit, and just suffocates that block. It's incredible, reliable team defense that he then immediately flows into some of the most suffocating on-ball defense you'll see from anyone in the country this year. This is arguably my favorite clip of Castle on defense all season. It is just suffocating stuff. He is putting Cam Jones in an absolute torture chamber. I love every aspect of this play. All right, let's break it down. So from the start, he's just draped all over Cam Jones. Jones was a phenomenal scorer all season for Marquette. He did not have fun against Castle. So from start here, Jones tries to separate, doesn't create much of anything. Castle's able to explode after him and just blows through this kind of sad excuse for a screen here. It should be a decent screen that creates space for Jones coming off a pin down. Ideally, Marquette, Jones is able to come off this handoff and get a pretty clean look from three, because Oso would be screening clean and Castle would have been disrupted by the screen. Castle just blows through it, stays glued to Jones, and by the time that Jones should be turning to elevate for a three, he's instead turning into Castle's chest. Castle is surrendered zero space for Jones and has no intention of doing so anytime soon. By staying glued to Jones, he doesn't give Oso any space to set a clean screen. He's in his grill. He's not fouling, which is a real important part here, and he's not giving Jones any room to maneuver or navigate. Again, he gets back up into Jones to take away another potential screen from Oso. He's just not having it. He's having zero of it, and he's dead set on taking away anything that Jones wants to do. As Jones drives, Cam Spencer's there playing gap help, Klingon is there, and Castle is still right on his hip. Jones pivots, a little fake there. He's done. He's like, Oso, take this ball. I want nothing to do with it. Get Castle away from me. I'm sick of it. Castle stays glued, and instead of giving up, this is one of the things I love most about this play, is that instead of giving up on this play once Jones passes it and considering his job done, which would be understandable, he just blew up this entire offensive possession single-handedly, Castle stays engaged. He knows that the play's not done because they don't have the ball back yet. He stays engaged as Oso drives off of this little makeshift cross screen on Klingon. Castle's going to reach in, which forces Oso to kind of shield the ball further to his right and allows Cam Spencer to dig in and force the turnover. It is impeccable defense from start to finish. Let's just watch it at full speed one more time and really appreciate the physicality, the fundamentals, and the reaction speed here from start to finish by Castle. It's just grade A stuff. On this final one, we just get another really fantastic sense of Castle's team defense, defensive awareness, and offensive fundamentals. DePaul ends up making the shot, but from start to finish, Castle is exactly where he needs to be at every point of the play. That's a tough shot to make. You tip your hat to it, but everything Castle does here on defense is exactly what you want. So as the play is kind of developing, Castle's in perfect position, keeping an eye on his man, keeping an eye on the ball, just back it up, and just look at Castle constantly glancing, knowing where he is, and making sure that his positioning is correct. As the ball swings, Castle's man is going to circle to the opposite corner, and Castle knows that the whole window dressing that DePaul just ran was to just set up this empty corner pick and roll. So he knows that his man is circling out to the opposite corner, and he knows that he is the last line of defense as on this empty corner pick and roll. So he stays in the middle of the lane and being that really reliable help team defender and taking away this role. If he would have just kind of checked out and gone through the motions and stayed with his man, tracking him to the corner, DePaul gets a wide open dunk here. And it's, a solid offensive set that gets a great look. Instead, Castle disrupts it. He stays home, reads the ball handler, and knows that now that he's left his feet, he's making that kick out to his man in the corner. As the ball arrives, Castle closes out under control, low defensive stance, allows him to react to whatever his man is doing off the bounce here. He cuts off the drive a couple times, walls up, slides his feet to perfection. He's never out of position for a second. He is glued to his man and doesn't bite on the fakes. The shoulder doesn't really create any separation. As his man goes up, I guess the shoulder created enough separation to get this shot off, but you can't contest a tough off-balance turnaround hook shot much better than this. Castle gets a really strong contest, ball bounces around the rim, it falls, but from start to finish here, this is exactly what you want to see from your premier perimeter defender from start to finish, blending team defense into awesome on-ball defense. If they make it, they make it. You tip your hat, you move on. From start to finish this year, Stephon Castle showed that he's not only one of the best perimeter defenders in the 2024 NBA draft, but that he was one of the very best all-around defenders in the entire country. At 6'6", 210 pounds, Castle can do stuff at the point of attack that most players simply can't. His size and strength allow him to navigate screens. His fundamentals and his balance and his strong base allow him to stick to ball handlers like glue. Whether he's defending in isolation, DHOs, pick and roll, you name it, his on-ball defense was absolutely elite from start to finish. Even off-ball, Castle was consistently in the right place at the right time. His teammates could rely on him, and even when he had to scramble and close out, it was almost always under control, making sure that he wasn't leaving his teammates out to dry and scramble for rotations. In the 2024 NBA draft class, Stephon Castle is one of the very elite all-around defenders.